A hero is only as good as the villain, or so the saying goes. But what happens when the villain may have actually been in the right? Turns out it happens quite often, even in hit animated features. Even though we were taught to hate these characters, turns out they had their own reasons for acting the way they did, and we get it. Before we count down, be sure to click that subscribe button and stay up to date with all the content coming your way from Screen Rant. Also, can you guess the hit animated film based off of these emojis? Stay tuned to find out.
Absolutely impossible. We're on a cross-country.
Shere Khan. Shere Khan is one evil dude. The terrifying Bengal tiger was the primary antagonist in the Jungle Book films, both the classic animated version and the recent live-action adaptation. Khan was merciless and had it out for the man-cub known as Mowgli. Considering Mowgli is just a child and hasn't done anything to warrant such hatred, we definitely sided against the tiger in this conflict. But let's stop and evaluate the beef when taking in what's going on around the jungle. No matter if you're looking at the conflict in the 1800s when the original book was written, or in modern times, humans are doing some serious damage to the wildlife in regions like India. We came with weapons, hunted to the point of extinction, and burned down the jungle. Considering Shere Khan is a Bengal tiger, an animal that's on the endangered species list, he's rightfully worried about having a human so close to him. Khan bears the scars of previous conflicts and obviously thinks that any human interaction will lead to trouble for the animal kingdom. He may be a little extreme and prejudiced in his thinking, but he's not wrong in thinking that humans largely have done more damage than good in his point of view.
This is ludicrous.
Hey, Bozo, you got a brain in there? Take that!
Sid was a seriously troubled kid that wreaked mayhem, torture, and death upon unsuspecting toys. The plastic characters in Andy's bedroom trembled in fear before his antics, which resulted in a toy soldier being blown to bits and various other toys being mashed together. Pretty messed up stuff. But consider this, Sid actually isn't quite the villain we perceived him to be. While Hannah is nowhere as bad, Sid as the eldest took his upbringing quite poorly. Thanks to the scene where Buzz learned he was a toy, we know that Sid's dad is something of a lazy slob and likely a drunk. His mother doesn't seem to have any sort of positive relationship with him either, as she allows explosives to go off regularly in her backyard. It's not so crazy to think that Sid's morbid actions are actually a cry for help. He does them in plain view of his family, but fails to get any kind of discipline from them. Plus, Sid has no idea that he was blowing up sentient toys. If he had known that, chances are he would have put an end to his antics, which is what happened when Woody exposed the truth to Sid. So while he was a brat, he was sadly a product of his environment and a misguided and troubled youth.
Poor unfortunate soul.
Ursula. They say never judge a book by its cover, so maybe we should all do the same when it comes to animated movie villains. Sure, Ursula from The Little Mermaid looks pretty darn evil, with her tentacles, purple skin, and white hair, but let's look at the facts. During the film, Ursula mentions that she used to live in Triton's palace, but for reasons ultimately unknown, she was banished. Now, while the film wants us to assume that Ursula was up to no good, wouldn't it make more sense to imprison her if that was the case? Triton is known to be, well, how shall we put this, something of a human hater and has a nasty temper. So it's possible that this is all Triton's fault. Think about it. If Ursula really wanted to harm Ariel, wouldn't she have cursed her or outright killed her to make a point? Instead, she gives Ariel a 3-day contract to decide for herself. Plus, she doesn't even force Ariel to sign. Well, that doesn't sound so sinister. She did end up causing havoc later in the film, but her pet eels did just die, so she's kinda justified. In the end, probably not an upstanding citizen, but definitely not the supervillain we were led to believe.
Know what we do to kings who step out of their kingdom?
Pugh, you can't do anything to me.
The Hyenas. The Lion King is one of the best films from the old Disney Renaissance and coincidentally was recently re-released on Blu-ray. The tale was complex and intense, which amounted to essentially retelling Hamlet but with lions instead. Although Scar was the primary antagonist of the film, the hyenas definitely caused a lot of problems as his lackeys. They carried out Scar's every command and instigated the stampede that ultimately led to Mufasa's demise. Hard to forgive something like that, but the hyenas actually had it really hard if you stop to think about it. As great and powerful as Mufasa was, he banished the hyenas from his kingdom and sent them to the elephant graveyard, a place full of skeletons and little light. Hyenas are scavengers, so they generally feed on animals that are already dead. Not much hassle for the kingdom at large, considering the circle of life is essentially their motto. With a shortage of food and being exiled, no wonder the hyenas were restless and decided to join up with Scar. Of course, when he took over, all the food vanished, so things just didn't work out for them in this flick.
But where is it?
Mermaid Lagoon.
Hook. We all know to fear Hook and cheer on Peter Pan in the classic film. Hook, the fearsome pirate, hunts down Peter incisively, which kind of makes it hard to sympathize with him. But what if we told you that we should have been cheering for Hook this whole time and scorning Peter Pan? Think about it. Peter Pan is a magical and immortal being who essentially kidnaps children and brings them to another land. Furthermore, he fought Captain Hook and took his hand, resulting in the infamous pirate having his famous moniker. Oh, and there's the whole alligator chasing him as a result of that loss of limb thing. From Hook's point of view, he's totally justified in his actions. Pan is responsible for a lot of bad things happening to Hook in Neverland, and Hook only wants to right a lot of the wrongs that were done by Peter. So he hunts him down in hopes of finally catching him and putting a stop to Peter's madness. Hook's also shown himself to be trustworthy and respected as he captains his crew diligently. With Smee, he even shows off what could be described as a light friendship. When you compare all of that to Peter Pan, it makes us wonder just who we were supposed to root for.
Well, here's your precious prince.
Maleficent. She definitely looks evil, doesn't she? Those black robes, her magic, and her horns scream, "I'm the bad guy, loathe me." Perhaps she could have done more to make herself a bit more inviting, but in the end, looks shouldn't matter, and things like this could have been avoided. When the king and queen were introducing the kingdom to their daughter Aurora at the baptism, everyone and their moms got invited to that. Except Maleficent, of course. That entire conflict boils down to the monarchs not inviting one person to the party. If they were just a bit more open-minded and inviting, then the whole spinning wheel situation and their daughter living her life in the woods wouldn't have happened. The king and queen may not have been besties with Maleficent, but as the royal monarchy, their invite should go out to everyone and not play favorites. When that situation boils down to one person not being invited, well, that's just being cruel. She just wanted to be included, yet she was constantly shunned and outcast by society. Maybe if we all learned to be a little more open-minded, bad things like this wouldn't have happened, right? Thankfully, we have no evil sorceresses in our time, that we know of.
Guy, relax. It's only halftime.
Hades. He may have a head made out of literal flames and rules the underworld, but Hades actually isn't a bad dude. Right off the bat, Hades has never been portrayed as evil in mythology despite having one seriously crappy job. He takes it and does his job pretty well, even in the Disney version. But in his animated form, he's pretty tired of being the ruler of the underworld while all the other Olympians party it up on Mount Olympus. Zeus is portrayed as a righteous dude, but we all know Zeus is a shady character. That god cheats on Hera like every day. He flies down to Earth, sometimes producing a demigod like Hercules in the process. And this guy's the leader? Hades was definitely cold and spent years planning his revenge, but he was clear about it to the other gods. When using Meg, she offers her soul to him in exchange for her lover's life. Hades actually accepts this deal and holds her to it, despite the fact that Meg's boyfriend ditches her, which causes Meg to be stuck with Hades. Although it's a sad situation, it's not one Hades instigated. He merely used a situation for the betterment of his plan against those he feels wronged him.
And it's not incredible either. That ship has sailed. All I wanted was to help you. I only wanted to help.
Syndrome. Syndrome was the charismatic and over-the-top villain from the hit 2004 film The Incredibles. His outfit screamed villain and he was seemingly the evilest dude out there. But was he really? We don't think so. At the start of the film, Syndrome is actually just a boy and the biggest fan of Mr. Incredible. Like fanboy screaming up and down and has all the posters and toys fan. He's just minding his own business one day and actually stumbles into Mr. Incredible while fighting crime. Eager to help in any way, he offers his services only to be rejected due to not having any superpowers. Ouch. Naturally, this had a negative impact on the young boy and he grew up to become a villain in the eyes of the Incredibles. But was Syndrome's plan really all that bad? Sure, perhaps he was a bit naive and not seeing the bigger picture, but all he wanted to do was give regular folks their own superpowers, so they can be the best person they could be. Admit it though, if you had superpowers, you would be in trouble within the first 10 minutes of getting them. So this plan may not be the greatest plan, but he did mean well.
Well, hello there.
Lotso. Lotso seems like a pretty brutal character. He may come off as a lovable teddy bear, but he's actually a toy criminal mastermind who runs the daycare like a prison. No one gets out with Lotso in charge. But why is he like that? Lotso has some serious abandonment issues. He was once loved and treasured by a little girl until she forgot him at a rest stop. But since she's unaware that the toys are sentient beings, her family just replaced Lotso and got her a new one from the store. Lotso saw all this go down and it tore him up inside. Toys don't have the same understanding we humans do, nor do they have the same emotional range. Lotso took this as a huge betrayal after he walked all the way back home, so he felt no other toy should go through what he went through. He was certainly extreme in his methods, but he definitely didn't mean any wrongdoings. He just wanted all the toys living under his roof to be played with forever, and with the kids constantly coming to the daycare, his toys were guaranteed playtime forever. In his mind, Lotso's doing the right thing and doing it well.
I'll have Belle for my wife. Make no mistake about that.
Gaston. Oh, Gaston, what are we gonna do with you? This guy is class A douchery who's in love with himself. When he's not away soldiering, he's known to be rather controlling, misogynistic, and kind of unpleasant. But when you factor in that this is the 1700s and just about every man was, Gaston just becomes a face in the crowd. But when standing next to the Beast, Gaston actually shouldn't be that bad. And no, we're not talking about their looks here. Gaston didn't exactly do very many nice things in the film, but most of what he did, the Beast also did in some capacity. Gaston actually wanted to marry Belle from the outset, while Beast wanted to own her in a less than acceptable fashion. Although both Gaston and the Beast locked up Belle's father, tie game there, boys, Gaston started a mob to rescue Belle from the kidnapper, who was known to be violent when he was angry, a trait that Gaston never had for all his flaws. He ultimately ended up dying on a crusade to rescue the girl he wanted to marry, but since Belle wasn't into Gaston, he was perceived as the villain. He may not be Prince Charming, but he definitely wasn't abusive or violent. That's it for now, everyone. Which villain do you think was actually in the right? Was there anyone that we missed that you've always thought was a better character than we were led to believe? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, give this video a like and click that subscribe button to get all the latest content added to your playlist. Thanks for watching.